Guten Tag alle, Herr Walles hier. Heute wollte ich ein Video über Konjunktiv I machen. Wir werden auch über Konjunktiv II sprechen, aber dieses Video behandelt sich am meisten mit Konjunktiv I. So, hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about the conjunctive 1, or the subjunctive, as we say in English, subjunctive 1 and 2. So before we get started, let's make sure you understand that there are two forms of the subjunctive in German. Like the passive voice, and if you don't know what that is, you want to check out our video over that. The subjunctive, like the passive, is a mood and not a tense. The subjunctive is used to express doubt, uncertainty, or in hypothetical statements. This contrasts with what we in English call the indicative mood, or some people call the active voice, which is used to express facts. Okay, so Konjunktiv I, or subjunctive 1, or sometimes also referred to as a special subjunctive. And then we have the Konjunktiv II, or subjunctive 2. Okay, so for the subjunctive 1, or special subjunctive, it's going to be used most commonly in indirect speech. So you'll see this a lot in reports where people, in, for example, the newspaper, are reporting what someone else has said about something. So it's not where you receive the information directly, but via a third party. The Konjunktiv II, or subjunctive 2, is the most commonly used form to talk about hypothetical situations and is used far more than the subjunctive 1 in speaking. You may hear the subjunctive 1 every now and again in speaking, especially like in, for example, sei gut, subjunctive 1. But for the most part, in speaking, you'll hear the subjunctive 2. Okay, so we're going to focus today again on just the subjunctive 1. We have several videos over the subjunctive 2, and you're more than welcome to check those out. The subjunctive 1 is a special form of the verb. It's the equivalent of quoting someone, and it's used to indicate that the author of an article or story is reporting what another person has said. It's a formal style used in newspaper writing or literature. Okay, so for example, here's an example of the special subjunctive, or Konjunktiv I. Der Mann sagt, müsse jeden Tag in der Woche arbeiten. If we were saying this directly, the man said, der Mann sagt, ich muss jeden Tag in der Woche arbeiten. So in the second sentence, I'm using the direct speech, but in that first example, you can see that someone else is saying what the man said. Okay, so that's the difference. Okay, in reported speech, there are three participants: the author, the person reading, which is you, and a third person who has been reporting on what the direct quote was. When the author speaks of information known to him, he uses the indicative. Okay. However, when the author reports to the reader what a third person said, you're using the subjunctive, or the Konjunktiv I in German. For example, Mr. Wallace said, Herr Wallace sagte, ein Leben ist nicht lang genug, Deutsch zu lernen. This is a direct quote of what I said. However, someone could also say, another person quoting what I said, Herr Wallace sagte, ein Leben sei nicht lang genug, Deutsch zu lernen. Here, it's words that a third party is saying. It's not the direct quote, but rather someone reporting it. Okay, so let's look at how the subjunctive 1 is formed in the present tense with two critical verbs, haben and sein. So it's ich habe, du habest, habe, wir haben, ihr habet, sie haben. And one thing you're going to notice here is that it looks like in some cases that it is the present tense conjugation of the verb. Ich habe is I have also. Wir haben, we have. So this is why in German that the most common example, or the most prolific use of the verbs in the special subjunctive, is going to be in the third person singular, because it looks significantly different from the way it looks when it's conjugated in the present tense. Another verb you're going to need to be aware of is sein, and it's the only exception to these endings here on haben. It's the only exception, and it omits the e in the first and the third person singular. So ich sei, Du seiest, er sei, wir seien, ihr seiet, sie seien. And you can see here that this is considerably different from the way the verb looks in its present tense, which would be ich bin, du bist, er ist, wir sind, ihr seid, sie sind. So there's no mistaking it. But that's really an exception. In most German verbs, subjunctive one will be indistinguishable from the present tense in the first person singular conjugation and in the first person plural conjugation, as well as in the third person plural conjugation. Okay, so let's look at how it's used with just another regular verb. Let's take the verb kochen. So if we were using the special subjunctive here, ich koche, you see that looks just like the present tense of this verb. But here you start to recognize a change, du kochest. Now at this point I will tell you that these second person singular conjugations in the special subjunctive can appear, but this is relatively rare. Er koche, and you see that's different also from the present tense, which would have ended in a T. Er kocht. Wir kochen. Ihr kochet, and sie kochen. And the point I want to make here is the third person singular is the form that you are most likely to see, and therefore it's the one that you want to learn. And it's pretty recognizable if you're reading along and instead of sie kocht it says sie koche. You know this is not a direct quote that the person said. Okay, let's look at how it's used in the present tense with modal verbs. This is a little bit different, so it's worth taking a look at separately. Since conjunctive 1 or Konjunktiv I or subjunctive 1 appears typically in the third person singular only, it's not necessary to learn the full set of conjugations for this verb form for these modal verbs, and for in large part for all verbs, except with the exception of possibly sein. Forms for second person singular exist but are rarely used. Plural is not used except with the verb sein, like I mentioned. Okay, so here we have all our modal verbs, können, müssen, sollen, wollen, dürfen, and mögen, and I have their meanings in English. So if we wanted to report or conjugate this in the special subjunctive or Konjunktiv I, it'd become ich könne. If the modal verb has umlauts in the infinitive form, then these are retained when you create the third person singular conjugation of the verb in the subjunctive. For example, müssen had umlauts, so it's müsse. Sollen is solle. And you'll notice here it didn't have umlauts in this original, so it doesn't have them in the special subjunctive. Wolle, dürfe, und möge. Okay. Now let's try again with some more regular verbs, just so you can get the hang of it and see what I'm talking about. Spielen, to play. So again, ich spiele, du spielest, er spiele, wir spielen, ihr spielet, sie spielen. This is the special subjunctive or Konjunktiv I conjugation of this verb. Lernen, ich lerne, du lernest, er lerne, wir lernen, ihr lernet, sie lernen. So the main thing you're going to want to learn is this third person singular form, as that is the one that you will most likely encounter. Special subjunctive is based on the infinitive of the verb, and the special subjunctive appears typically in third person singular only. The third person singular conjugation of Konjunktiv I is the stem of the verb plus the ending E. So sie macht becomes sie mache, sie sagt becomes sie sage, sie hat sie habe, und sie wird sie werde. So you can see here that's a clear distinction between the present tense third person singular conjugation and its conjugation in the subjunctive form. Now let's look at how it's formed in the future tense. When future tense in a regular verb is going to use werden, okay? So forming the future tense in the subjunctive one is as easy as using the subjunctive one conjugations of the verb werden along with the infinitive of the secondary verb, which is placed at the end of the sentence. This is just like it was in the present tense. So here let's learn the werden here. Ich werde, du werdest, er werde, wir werden, ihr werdet, sie werden. So again, we're focusing on that third person singular conjugation. You see here that it's ich werde. So, and then at the end, you're going to have the other verbs. So for example, sentence, er sagt, er werde nicht gehen. Someone is reporting what he said, and he said he will not go. He says he will not go. Someone else is saying it, not the man, not the person, not a direct quote. Remember that. So this is the subjunctive one of werden, and at the end we have our secondary verb. So this is how you form the future tense using the special subjunctive. Okay, now let's look at how it's formed in the past tense. Forming the past tense using the subjunctive one will involve forms of either haben or sein, which are your helping verbs, formed in their subjunctive one forms, and the past participle of the secondary verb. So these are just mirrors of what you would expect in the regular past tense. Lernte, hat gelernt, hatte gelernt. These are three tenses in German. Lernte is the Präteritum, or simple past. Sometimes in English we call it just the past. Hat gelernt, this is the present perfect, or the Perfekt in German. And hatte gelernt, in English the Plusquam, in German rather the Plusquam Perfekt, and the past perfect we would say, or pluperfect in English. Okay, so all of these tenses can be combined into one tense using the special subjunctive mood of this verb haben. So we're going to take the helping verb, which, as you know, if you've studied the perfect tenses, helping verbs in German can be two varieties, either haben or sein, and if you want to know more information about that, you should look at our video about it. Sagt, habe Deutsch gelernt. So here we're using the subjunctive one form of haben, and then we're using the past participle, the second verb, at the end. And this is kind of like saying he said he had learned German. Okay, another example using a strong verb, gehen. Ging, ist gegangen, war gegangen. And here the helping verb is changed from haben to sein because this is a verb of motion, a transitive verb moving from one, an intransitive verb moving from one to another place. So it's going to be, sagt, sei nach Atlanta gegangen. He said he had gone to Atlanta. And this replaces all of these three tenses in the indicative mood, or active voice if you prefer. Okay, I know there's a lot going on here. I know that might seem confusing, and I know that for a lot of people this is an advanced topic, but it's something that you do need to be aware of, especially if you're reading and become familiar with it. The simple part of it is if you just remember the third person singular conjugation, which is going to take the root of the verb and add an e to it, like habe or lerne. That is the form you're going to see most often, and whenever you see that combined with a subject that is in the third person singular, sie or s or any object, you know that then you're looking at it, because otherwise it would end in a t. Okay, vielen Dank für das Zuschauen. Ich hoffe, dass das ein bisschen geholfen hat. Ich weiß, es ein bisschen schwierig war. I know it was a little difficult. Hopefully you followed me. Okay, and thank you.